Ed Gein was an infamous American serial killer and grave robber who lived in rural Wisconsin in the mid 20th century. He's famously known for being the inspiration of classic horror films like Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. On this pil- on this podcast, we aim to explore the psychology of Ed Gein and attempt to understand what may have motivated him to commit such heinous crimes. Welcome to
The
501
501
Podcast.
So let's start with his early childhood and background before we get into the juicy bits. Edward Theodore Gein was born in 1906 in La Crosse County, Wisconsin, and grew up in a small farming community.
He was the second of two children born to Augusta and George Gein. His father, George, was an alcoholic who struggled to keep a job and was physically abusive to his wife and children.
His mother, Augusta, was a deeply religious woman who had a profound influence on Ed's upbringing. She preached that the world was evil and that men are unmannered, vile creatures, and women were immoral and sinful. Augusta would severely punish Gein if he tried to make friends, and her loathe towards sex was so strong. She even grabbed his weenie and nuts and called him the curse of a man when she once caught him jerking the chicken in the bathroom. Augusta also forbade her children from having friends and participating in school activities, which led to Ed's isolation and social withdrawal.
Which isn't really fair because around 1 in every 7 kids in the United States deal with an abusive or neglectful household in their life, and most of them don't become serial killers. So,
Ed and his brother, Henry, were quite different people, while Ed idolized and was infatuated by the teachings and actions of his mother. Henry was not receptive to her. Henry was commonly argue and disapprove of what his mother would tell the boys, which angered Ed greatly.
around 1915, his mother moved the family to a farm outside of Plainfield, Wisconsin, and Ed and his brother were rarely allowed to leave the farm.
Yeah, that must suck.
They were complete shut-ins. And that was until the 1940s, and this is the first definitive sign that something's up with this dude. I mean, the worst part is when it happened, nobody even suspected anything of it, but if you really look back at it now, it's arguably proof.
It was pretty sus.
It was pretty sus. It was pretty sus. On May 16th, 1944, Henry George Gein died under mysterious circumstances during a fire near the family's farm.
Ed Gein reported his brother missing to the police, but then single-handedly was able to lead them directly to the body when they arrived at the farm.
Oh,
Not just that, when the body was examined following the death, there were multiple blunt trauma marks found on the temple of his body. Alright now, I'm not saying he did it, but some claim that Ed had murdered his brother for disrespecting their mother. But when the official report was ruled an accident, it claimed that while trying to fight the fire, Henry had tripped and fallen on his head, which caused him to pass out, and the bruises found on his head, and he died of, I don't even know
asphyxiation shortly after passing out. Shortly after her son's death, though, Ed's mother had suffered a stroke, and her mental state had begun to go into a downward spiral, which would ultimately cause her death.
Darn, that must suck.
Alright, now looking back at this case, from what we know about Ed, what do you think?
What do I think? I think he's a weirdo, to be honest. Like,
it was pretty suspicious, you know?
The thing about his brother was pretty sus.
Okay. Alright.
So following his brother's death, there was not much to talk about for a few years. Ed had a few jobs here and there and would help out in the community from now and then. Due to his obsession with his mother, Ed refused to date any women. Dang. Basically, the guy was taught to be an incel by his mom. This was until she suffered a fatal stroke in 1945.
And this is really where Ed just loses it. Like, alright, for after her death, though, he was said to have a distorted sense of reality and a warped understanding of social norms and values. So much to the point that during her funeral, uh, people that were in attendance of it were saying how he would continuously nonstop cry the whole time as though he was almost like a child.
18 months after the death of his mother, Egin had dug up her body from her grave, then brutally twisted and removed her head with his bare hands.
That's disgusting.
That's disgusting.
Absolutely foul. After this, Gein began scouting recent obituaries of women around his mother's age and returned to the cemetery to rob their recently buried bodies, which is absolutely sickening.
It's pretty gross, if you ask me. During this period, he robbed graves, killed 2 women, and engaged in various other disgusting actions. Gein's crimes were motivated by a desire to create a woman suit he could wear as a substitute for his deceased mother, whom he idolized. He would wear this suit and dance around in the moonlight. What a weirdo, dude.
Yeah, that's a little weird. It's a interesting hobby. Gein's first known murder victim was Mary Hagen, a local tavern owner whom he killed in 1954. Ed was said to have visited Mary multiple times at her job and repeatedly tried to make advances on her. Her disappearing went unnoticed for some time, but following the discovery of blood at the tavern by her son, Gein was the first name said to be a suspect by her son.
On arrival of the police at Gein's home, they found not only Hogan's body hanging from a hook in the barn, like if you were skinning a deer, with her head missing, but also a collection of human remains, including skulls, skin, and bones. That's kind of weird, man.
Yeah.
The investigation of Gein's property also led to the discovery of several other gruesome objects that he had created. He made a suit made of human skin, a belt made of human nipples, and bows made of human skulls, and even a lampshade made of like skin from a dude. It's kind of weird.
My question is like, how did it take so long? And how did no one notice the graves were robbed? Really, because that's so many. You have to rob so many graves to be able to make a belt out of
That's
nipples.
kind of weird.
Because there's only 2 nipples on this person,
Yeah.
and that's a whole belt. So that's pretty crazy.
Now the lampshade, dude. That's the heating from the light bulb had to make it stink.
Like wet. It
Ew.
was like sweaty almost.
And drinking from human skulls, dude? Come on now.
Gein was eventually charged with 2 counts of murder and found not guilty by reason of insanity, which is something I find absolutely insane. He got off easy.
He did.
There's really nothing. They just sent him to a hospital for the rest of his life.
He blamed his mom for his insanity.
Like the crimes and blatant disregard of human life, and he just got away with it with only being sent into a mental institution where he spent the rest of his life until his death in 1984.
Gein's behavior can be seen as a manifestation of his disturbed psychological state. He believed that by creating a suit of human skin, he could become his mother and experience the love and nurturing that he had been denied in his childhood. The murders of Ed Gein still to this day stand out as one of the most gruesome and disturbing cases ever committed. These actions were later said to have inspired the character of Norman Bates in the novel and film Psycho, as well as Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, what do you think about this, man?
Just the dude in general, or the fact that his acts have been used as almost a way to entertain people.
I suppose, man.
It's pretty sick to think
I
about.
wonder if he ever sold those items to anyone.
Sold them? I'm pretty sure the cops took control of those. Which
Well, I think that's a wrap here on this podcast.
Alright. Well, see you.